All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the devastating 1982 financial ruin of a guy who eventually became a billionaire. We're not just rattling off some generic self-help rules here, no way. We are looking at a complete system forged in the absolute ashes of his career, a system that treats life literally like a giant cause and effect machine.
All right, Chapter 1, the 1982 market crash. To really understand this, we've got to go back and set the stage with Ray Dalio's absolute rock-bottom moment. Back in the late 70s and early 80s, Dalio was this up-and-coming investor who had nailed a few major market moves. And man, that success bred just absolute blinding arrogance. He didn't just think he was right, he thought he was basically bulletproof. Now what's really interesting about this slide is this quote from him in '82. He went on national TV on Wall Street Week and aggressively bet against the entire American economy. He practically guaranteed a massive depression. And guess what? The stock market completely rallied out of nowhere. His predictions blew up right in his face.
And the fallout? It was absolute. We're not talking about a bad quarter. It was a total wipeout. He crashed so hard he had to fire all of his employees. By 1983, Dalio literally could not scrape together enough cash to buy a single plane ticket to Texas for a client meeting. A meeting that, could have saved his business. He was completely broke and had to borrow $4,000 from his dad just to keep the lights on for his family.
But here's the crazy part. That crushing, humiliating failure, it birthed his ultimate superpower. He realized the market wasn't the problem. His massive ego was the problem. He had been so wildly overconfident. Dalio realized he had to completely flip his mindset. He went from this arrogant certainty to figuring out how to actually deal with his own not knowing. He replaced the statement, "I am right," with a profound, terrifying question. How do I know I'm right?
Which brings us to Chapter 2, Life's 5-Step Loop.
That one terrifying question fundamentally shifted how he saw the world. Dalio had this huge epiphany. Reality isn't just random chaos. It's a gorgeous, perpetual motion machine of cause and effect, everything operating on fundamental laws. And if life is a machine, well, principles are your user manual. They're these fundamental truths that serve as foundations for behavior to get you what you actually want out of life. He realized most problems we face aren't completely new, right? They're usually just another one of those. Once you map out your principles, you stop reacting emotionally to every little crisis, and you start navigating the machine systematically.
Okay, let's dive right into this 5-step process for getting what you want. Step 1, you set your goals. Step 2, as you go after them, boom, you inevitably confront problems. Now, Step 3, and listen, this is where most of us completely fail. You have to calmly and analytically diagnose the root causes of those problems. This usually means looking in the mirror and confronting your own brutal weaknesses. Step 4, you design a plan to get around those root causes. And finally, Step 5, you execute. The contrast here is huge. While most people run away from their weaknesses, Dalio's loop uses the sheer pain of confronting them as the actual engine for your growth.
This perfectly captures what he calls failing well. Just look at the trajectory. It is not a straight line to the top, is it? You climb, you hit a snag, you dip down. That dip, that's the failure, that's the pain. But diagnosing why that hurt is exactly what slingshots you up to a higher level. Failing well creates this continuous loop where your absolute worst mistakes literally fuel your ascent. Let's transition over to Chapter 3, the idea meritocracy. So what happens when you take that personal life machine and scale it up to a massive company? You get Bridgewater Associates. And the culture he built there to do this is shockingly different from almost anywhere else. I mean, think about a standard corporate office. People nod politely in meetings, and then they whisper their actual complaints in the hallway, right? Contrast that with Bridgewater's intense culture of radical truth and radical transparency. They purposely drag every single disagreement right out into the open because, well, you can't fix a hidden problem.
Dalio actually turned this into a precise equation. An idea meritocracy equals radical truth plus radical transparency plus believability-weighted decision-making. Radical truth means you absolutely do not filter your thoughts, especially the critical ones. Radical transparency, that means giving almost everybody the ability to see almost everything going on. It totally destroys that toxic power dynamic of the inner circle versus everyone else. If you want to build a great machine, filtering your critical thoughts is just not an option. But here's the kicker, and you have to understand this. An idea meritocracy is not a democracy. Not all opinions are created equal. They use this thing called believability-weighted decision-making. Basically, a highly believable opinion comes from someone who has repeatedly successfully done the exact thing in question.
And, this is key, they can logically explain the cause and effect behind their thinking. If you haven't actually done it, or you can't explain the logic clearly, your vote simply counts for less. Yeah, it sounds brutal, but it's an unbelievably effective way to strip away ego and find the actual truth.
Which brings us to our final section. Chapter 4, Build Your Own Principles.
We've seen Dalio hit rock bottom, build this mental machine to loop his way back up, and then scale it into an absolute empire. But as we wrap this up, I want to bring this right back to you and your own choices. Dalio puts this incredible disclaimer in his work. He says, I am passing along these principles. It's up to you to decide how valuable they really are and what, if anything, you want to do with them. See, his goal isn't for you to just blindly copy and paste his rules into your life. He wants to trigger your own personal reflection.
So I've got to ask you, what are your recipes? When life just clocks you in the head with a brick, when you crash or you lose your money, a job, or your pride, how do you actually react to the pain of your own mistakes? I want to challenge you right now to stop looking at failure as a roadblock. The pain is just a signal. It's the machine literally flashing a warning light, telling you that one of your current principles is broken and desperately needs an upgrade.
To really evolve, you've got to extract the cold, hard lessons from your own unique crashes. Write down your own cause and effect rules. Test them out in the real world, adjust them when you inevitably mess up, and build your own perpetual motion machine. Because if your life is a machine, and you are the mechanic, well, I'm going to leave you with this one final thought to chew on. If you looked honestly at the design of your life right this very second, what is the very first part you would need to replace?